Welcome back to Listening to Reading. Today we are going to conclude the book, The Yellow House Mystery. It's Gertrude Chandler Warner's third book in the Boxcar Children's series. Chapter 16 is the final chapter, and it is called A Happy Home. And it's a little bit longer chapter today. So let's get started. The family had not gone very far when suddenly Joe stopped the car by the side of the road. "What's the matter?" asked Henry. "Bill's getting too tired," answered Joe. "This is all too much of a change for him. I want to fix a bed on the back seat so he can lie down." Benny looked up at Bill and saw that it was true. The old man was very white and his hands were shaking. "Oh, dear," said Jessie. "We talk to him too much. He isn't used to it." She and Alice helped Joe make a soft bed of blankets on the back seat. Bill did not say a word. Joe and Henry took his arms and helped him out of the front seat and into the back. Bill lay down at once and shut his eyes, as if he were very glad to lie down. The three girls took the middle seat, and Henry got up in front beside Benny. "He'll be all right," said Joe, looking back at Bill. "You can talk all you want to. I think he'll sleep." "Let's send that telegram to Grandfather at the next village," said Jessie. "What shall we say?" "10 words," said Benny. "No, you can send 15, said Henry. "Well, let's make up a telegram as we write." By the way, a telegram was a way for people to communicate. Before there was phones everywhere, a telegram would go from one city to another. They would pass it through the telegraph office, and one person would send it, another person would receive it, and it would go to wherever you wanted it to go to, and then it would be sent by messenger to the person that it was intended for. So that's what a telegram is. We should Let's make up a telegram as we write. We should certainly begin. Found Bill and the money. 5 words, said Violet, counting. All coming home today, said Jessie. That's 4 more. 9 so far. Then we can have 6 more words. We ought to say, we may be late for supper. We certainly will be late for supper, said Joe. Then Alice said, Benny, don't you think we should say something about Bill like weak and tired? Then Mrs. McGregor won't expect the big strong man who used to lift the boat. Benny counted on his fingers for a few minutes. Then he cried, we can say it this way. Found Bill and money. Bill very weak. All coming home today. Late for supper. Hello. Wonderful, Benny, said Joe, laughing. Your grandfather will know you made up that telegram for sure. I always like to say hello at the end of a telegram. Henry said, now, Benny, don't forget what you said. Keep saying it over and over until we come to a village. This gave Benny something to do. When they did stop at the village, he could remember every word. As the girl wrote down the telegram, Jessie cried, Henry, let's say it's from the Boxcar Children. Here is a picture of Benny telling exactly what to say in the telegram. All right, let's continue on. The girl stopped writing and looked up in surprise. Are you the 4 children who lived in a boxcar? She asked. Yes, we did, said Benny. We had fun. And you found your grandfather at last, she cried. You looked from one smiling face to another. I read about you in the paper, but I never expected to see you. This telegram is to our grandfather, said Benny, and you can say it's from the Boxcar Children, and Alice and Joe. He'll know. Yes, I guess he will, laughed the girl. I'll send it right off. It will get to him in an hour. Fine, said Henry, paying for the telegram. Now let's get on our way. Bill was still asleep when they got back into the station wagon. He was still asleep at lunchtime. They did not wake him for lunch. He needs sleep more than food now, said Joe. I do hope he isn't sick, said Alice, in a worried voice. I don't think he is, said Joe. I think he's just had way too much excitement. It's such a change from not talking at all to talking a lot. It shows us we'll have to be very careful, Bill, said Jessie, but I can hardly wait to ask him the end of that story. Bill slept all afternoon, and as they came near home, they had to wake him up. When they drove up to the door of their grandfather's house, Bill was sitting up very straight. Mr. Alden was sitting on the porch in a big chair. Beside him was Mrs. McGregor. They were waiting. Bill leaned forward to look. It's my Margaret, he said, almost crying. She has the same beautiful eyes. Joe and Henry helped the old man out of the car and up the steps. Bill! She put both arms around him and led him to her chair. "It's all right, Bill, it's all right," she said over and over. Just then there was a very loud noise from upstairs. It seemed to come from Jesse's room. It was Watch. He came rushing down the stairs and out the door, barking and barking. He could not believe that his four children had come back to see him again. At last he lay down by Jesse's feet, all tired out from the excitement and the barking. "Now I guess he will eat his meal," said Mr. Alden. "As for Mrs. McGregor, she hasn't eaten a good meal since you all went away." Benny said, "I think that's funny. We have so many people that can't eat. I don't have any trouble eating my meals." "Now that we're all together again, Benny," said Grandfather, laughing, "everyone will be all right. I think I shall even eat better myself. We'll have things for supper that you like best. There's a hamburger for you. Bill always liked fish best, and that's what he'll have. There's ham for you, Joe, and apple pie for Jesse." "No pie for me?" asked Benny, taking his grandfather's hand. "What do you think?" teased his grandfather. "I don't believe anyone will go hungry tonight." It was wonderful to see Bill eat. With his Margaret beside him again, he seemed like a different man. "I feel better and better," he said. And after supper, the family sat again on the porch. "Joe," whispered Benny, "couldn't we talk to Bill now? He seems all right to me." "You can try. We'll soon see how he takes it. We can stop if he gets too upset." Benny went over then to Bill and Margaret, and he put his hands over Bill's. "We want to ask you just a few more things, Bill. Are you too tired?" "No, little boy. I don't think I shall ever be tired again. Ask me anything you want." Benny looked at Joe, and Joe smiled back at him and nodded his head. Then Benny said, "We want to know something more about your brother. How is he going to make money 3 times as much?" "Well, I didn't know at first," answered Bill. "But later on, I found out that he was going to give it to some friends of his to bet on some racehorses." "Oh, he would have lost it all," cried Henry. "Yes, I know that now," said Bill. "His friends were bad people, I'm afraid. Sam would have been all right if his friends had let him alone, but he always did what they said, and I always did what my brother Sam said." He looked around sadly. "One night after Sam was killed, these men came up to Maine. They hunted all over my house, but they couldn't find the money. I didn't know where the tin box was myself, but they didn't believe me. They tried to make me tell them. We had a great fight, but at last they went away, and fortunately, I never saw them again." "Were they the ones that told you the barn was burned?" "Yes. They didn't want me to go home and tell all I knew, so they told me Margaret, my sweet, precious Margaret, was dead." "I suppose that finished you," said Benny. Bill smiled at him. "Yes, that finished me. I didn't want to live any more without Margaret, and I didn't want to see people. Besides, I couldn't come home without the money, so I went into the deep woods to live alone forever." "Oh, I'm so glad we found you," said Jessie suddenly. "Supposing we had never asked to go into the little yellow house on Surprise Island. Now you and Mrs. McGregor can live right here in her rooms, can't they, Grandfather?" "If her rooms are big enough," said Mr. Alden. "3 rooms ought to be big enough for 2 people," said Mrs. McGregor happily. "I can help with the horses," said Bill. "Do you still have horses?" "Yes, we have 2," answered Mr. Alden, "but you will rest a long time before doing any work." Darkness began to fall. The birds began to sing their evening songs. The family sat quietly for a minute and listened. Then Violet said, "Isn't this a happy house, Alice? You and Joe, so happy on the top floor, and Bill and Mrs. McGregor will be in their own little rooms," cried Benny. "Don't forget us," said Henry, "with our mystery all solved and getting back to Grandfather." "And we'll all go and live in the little yellow house on Surprise Island every summer," said Benny. "Hold on, my boy, not so fast," said Mr. Alden. "That's Bill's house." "Oh, so it is. Well, then, he and Mrs. McGregor can live in it every summer, and we can go over to see them." "Well, we'll see," said Mr. Alden with a big smile. Violet suddenly put her hand on her grandfather's knee, and she looked up into his kind face. She could not see very well, for it had grown quite dark, but she knew he was smiling at her. "Grandfather," she asked, Couldn't you use some of that money to fix up the little yellow house on Surprise Island? It's so dusty and the chairs are so old. That's a fine idea, said Mr. Alden, taking her small hand in his big one. We could buy a lot of chairs with that money. And by the way, where is the money? Right here, said Jessie at once. And here's a picture of some of the children and the grandfather, and you can tell that she's about ready to give the money over to him. She took it out of her handbag and gave it to Mr. Alden. Maybe Bill and I could paper and paint the rooms before school begins, said Henry. Oh, we could all paint, shouted Benny, jumping around. Let's paint the outside, too. That would be fun, said Alice. Joe and I could help you every day after work on the cave. Right now, you children have something new to think about, said Joe. We will take a lunch over every day and work until we get the house all fixed up. Violet sat down beside her grandfather in his great chair. He moved over quickly to make room for her and put her arms around her. I'm glad the little yellow house isn't a sad place for you anymore, Grandfather, she said, leaning her head back against his arm. It's going to be a happy place, a very happy place once again. We'll still paint it yellow, said Benny. What does that mean this time, Ben? Asked Henry, laughing at his little brother. Mrs. McGregor answered, smiling at Bill. To me it means, thank you, children. Mr. Alden said, to me it means I'm very glad you're all home again. Well, said Benny, what I really mean is that I can hardly wait until tomorrow to paint that little yellow house. And that is the end of the Yellow House mystery. Wow, what a mystery it was. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed your time on listening to reading. Gertrude Chandler Warner, she could really write, couldn't she? What's interesting is she was a school teacher. And when she was teaching, she knew, and she realized that there wasn't a ton of books for emerging readers, those that were beginning to be able to read chapter books. There weren't many books for them to read that were interesting. So she saw that there was a need, and so she created the Boxcar Children, and wow, were they special, and wow, was it a huge hit. From what I understand, Miss Gertrude Chandler Warner received thousands and thousands of letters every year asking from children asking her to write different stories about different things and thanking her for the wonderful stories that she wrote. Remember, she wrote 19 stories, or 19 books in all. Once again, I hope you've enjoyed the Yellow House mystery. I know I certainly did. And so remember, until next time, keep reading.